Welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining us today because we're about to unpack a truly fascinating piece of ancient history. We're diving deep into a classical text to figure out exactly how a legendary mythological king solved what was, frankly, an impossible logistical crisis. We're going to see how ancient ecology, some incredibly extreme survival tactics, and supposed divine intervention all crashed together to save an entire community. It's a wild story of sun, science, and survival. So let's just jump right in and see how this whole thing unfolded. So our story kicks off with a massive leadership dilemma. I want you to meet Yudhishthira. He's a king who has just lost literally everything. His wealth, his kingdom, his status, poof, gone. And now he's been exiled into this harsh, unforgiving forest. But here's the kicker. He is not alone. A huge group of devoted Brahmanas, basically scholars and priests, have followed him right into exile, and Yudhishthira is totally broke. He's got no treasury, no supply chains, and absolutely no way to feed this small army of followers. He's a king who can't provide for his people, which, in the ancient world, that is the ultimate royal failure. Out of options, Yudhishthira turns to his chief priest, a wise man named Dhaumya, with this incredibly desperate plea. He says, "Afflicted with many calamities, I am unable to support them. What should be done by me in such a pass?" Basically, he's admitting that he can't abandon them, but he just doesn't have the literal power to offer them any sustenance. It's this moment of crushing vulnerability, right? He's begging for a way out of a completely impossible burden. Okay, moving right along to Section 1, the ancient science of sustenance, where we'll be decoding Dhaumya's ecological wisdom. Now, instead of just offering some magical quick fix, Dhaumya actually breaks down the mechanics of global ecology. It's fascinating. He explains that when living beings were first created, they were starving. So the sun, stepping in like a compassionate father, went into the northern declension and drew up water with its rays. Then, moving to the southern declension, it centered its heat right over the earth. Next, the moon, which they considered the lord of the vegetable world, converts those solar vapors into clouds and pours them down as rain. And finally, this rain causes seeds to sprout into what the text calls the holy vegetable furnished with the six tastes. You see what's happening here? The sun and the moon are literally collaborating to create the agriculture that supports all creatures. And then Dhaumya hits him with this profound realization. Thus, the food that supporteth the lives of creatures is instinct with solar energy. I really want you to let that sink in for a second. Thousands of years ago, they were essentially stating that all food is, at its core, trapped sunlight. Because the sun provides this vital energy, it's considered the ultimate father of life. So Dhaumya tells the king, look, if you are this desperate for food, you have to go straight to the source. You must take refuge in the sun itself. Which brings us to Section 2, the practice of asceticism. Let's look at earning the sun god's favor. Yudhishthira knows he can't just politely ask the sun god for a favor, right? He has to earn it, and he has to earn it through some seriously grueling austerities. Physically, it's brutal. He stands in the freezing stream of the Ganges, turns his face directly toward the sun, and relies on air alone for his sustenance. That means zero food. But the spiritual discipline is equally demanding. He has to completely withdraw his mind from every worldly distraction and engage in pranayama, a really intense, controlled breathing practice meant to manage the internal airs of the body. So he's combining extreme physical deprivation with absolute laser-focused mental control. While he's locked into this incredibly difficult physical and mental state, Yudhishthira hits the climax of the ritual. He begins to sing a very specific hymn of praise, reciting exactly 108 names of the sun god Surya. And that number, 108, is no accident. It is deeply sacred in this tradition, basically representing the absolute completeness of the entire universe. The hymn actually speeds up here to convey this dizzying, immense scale. The sun is treated almost like a cosmic Swiss army knife. First, we have units of time. The sun is called Muhurta, Kshana, and Kala Chakra, literally the wheel of time itself. Next, the sun is equated with the supreme gods, being called Indra, Brahma, Vishnu, and Rudra. And finally, his cosmic roles. He's named the destroyer of darkness, the subtle mind, and the creator of the universe. By reciting these specific names, Yudhishthira isn't just praising a glowing orb in the sky. He is acknowledging that the sun is the ultimate, all-encompassing force of existence. Let's dive into Section 3, the sun god's boon, a divine but highly conditional gift. So, all of this intense focus and reverence, it finally pays off. Pleased with the king's pure intention to just feed his guests, the sun god, Vivaswan, physically appears, blazing like fire, and grants Yudhishthira this remarkable artifact, a magical copper vessel. But, as we see with pretty much all ancient mythology, a divine gift of this magnitude is never just a free-for-all. The fine print on this thing is incredibly specific. Here are the strict, non-negotiable rules of this vessel. First, there's a hard time limit. It will provide food for exactly 12 years, specifically mentioned as 5 and 7 years together, which sustains them until the 14th year when Yudhishthira is destined to get his kingdom back. Second, it supplies 4 exact types of food: fruits, roots, meat, and cooked vegetables. Third, the king actually still has to do some of the work. He has to cook a little bit of clean food, which the vessel then magically multiplies into an inexhaustible amount. But the absolute most crucial rule is this last one. The inexhaustible supply ends for the day only after Panchali, his wife, who's also known as Draupadi, takes her meal. That brings us to our final part, Section 4, the inexhaustible vessel in action, mapping out the hierarchy of the feast. So how does an endless food source actually change their daily lives in the forest? Well, it perfectly preserves their strict societal order through a really rigid hierarchy. First, Yudhishthira feeds the regenerate ones, the Brahmanas. They always get to eat first. Once they're completely satisfied, his younger brothers are fed. Only after his brothers are done does Yudhishthira himself eat the remaining food, which the text specifically refers to as figasa. And then, finally, Draupadi eats last. The very second she takes her meal, the magic essentially hits an off switch, exhausting the vessel until the sun rises again the very next day. It's just this incredibly structured, methodical way to manage a literal miracle. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought to chew on. We've just walked through a heavily mythological story, right? We've got ancient gods, grueling asceticism, and magic copper vessels. But if you strip away the mythology for just a second, look at the core message Dhaumya taught Yudhishthira. He said the sun draws up water, creates rain, and embeds solar energy into plants, making the sun the ultimate father of all life. Think about modern thermodynamics and photosynthesis. Doesn't this ancient, reverent text align remarkably well with exactly what modern science tells us today about the sun being the foundational engine of all life on Earth? It really makes you wonder just how deeply our ancestors understood the sheer mechanics of the natural world, even if they had to use the language of the divine to explain it. Keep questioning the world around you, and we'll catch you next time.